Hello everyone, thank you very much for joining us for another story here at Annie Narrates. Here we review stories that beautiful people like yourselves post on the internet. Today's story's title goes like this. Parents tell me they can't pay for my college tuition because they have to pay for my sister's wedding and I need to contribute as well. So I told my sister's fiancé about it and he breaks off their wedding. Now, nobody wants to talk to me. Hey, so I did something a few days ago, and everyone's hating me for it. So I'm here on Reddit hoping for some advice on what to do next. I, 18 male, have an older sister, 26 female. My parents have always doted on her, and I've just known that I was an accident. Nobody's ever said it, but it's quite evident from the way they've always behaved with me. I'm not saying that I have had a very difficult childhood as such, but I would say that I never received the kind of attention that my sister did. It was hard when I was younger, but with time, I've grown used to it. My sister never made it any easier for me either, and would pick on me every chance she got, just because she could. And she always got away with it too. When she moved out of college, I could finally breathe a sigh of relief because she was gone and there would be nobody constantly making me feel bad about myself and bullying me. My parents continued to treat me with indifference even after she left, and I learned to stay confined to my room and pretend I wasn't there at all. The only time I'd talk to them would be if I needed money for something. But that was pretty much it. There was nothing else that we had to talk about. After high school, I'd been looking for colleges and applying because I was supposed to start in a few months. I've been accepted into one of the schools that I really wanted to get into, and I recently spoke to my parents about it. At the time, they didn't say anything and told me that they'd think about what to do. I did get this feeling that they weren't really willing to pay for my college tuition, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if they said that. So far, they'd only been paying for the things that I needed, since they were legally obliged to do at least the bare minimum for me financially. But now that I was an adult, I didn't have that protection anymore, and I was on my own. So I'd mentally prepared myself to be told that they wouldn't be paying for my tuition, and I had to somehow cover it on my own. But then about a week ago, they sat me down and told me that not only would they not be paying for my college tuition, they actually wanted me to pay them money and contribute to my sister's wedding fund. She was getting married in a couple of months since her boyfriend had proposed recently. Because she didn't have a well-paying job yet, she wanted our parents to pay for the entire shindig. She wasn't exactly holding back on the planning either and wanted to have a very fancy wedding. So my parents needed to save up money to be able to afford the kind of wedding that she wanted, and that's why they weren't going to pay for me to go to college. I asked them what exactly they had in mind in case I said I didn't want to contribute, and they told me that, in that case, they couldn't allow me to live in their house anymore if I didn't even do the bare minimum for my quote-unquote family. That was really laughable because they were referring to themselves and my sister as my family, but I never really felt it. I told them that I was ready to move out and wished them luck. They remained as indifferent as ever while I left the house and headed over to a friend's place for the night. It was infuriating to watch them completely ignore me even as I was leaving, and I knew that my sister would love to hear about this from my parents. I didn't have any other family to go to because unfortunately, thanks to my sister, everybody thought of me as some juvenile delinquent and preferred to stay away from me. My grandparents on both sides were long gone and everybody else kept their distance from me, because my sister used to tell them stories about me getting in all sorts of nonsense all the time and that I was apparently a troubled kid. So naturally, none of my relatives liked me and my parents never tried to make it better by setting the record straight either. That's how I ended up living at my friend's place, but thankfully, he and his family were kind enough to tell me that I could live with them for as long as I needed to. They knew that my family wasn't really competent enough to take care of me, so they stepped up and I will always be grateful for that. But getting away from them wasn't enough, and I was just so angry and hurt by everything that they'd made me feel for the last 18 years of my life. Like, I just wasn't good enough. I wanted them to feel sorry about it. I wanted to get revenge on them and do something that would make them feel just as terrible as they'd made me feel. And that's where I probably went wrong, because I decided to get my sister's fiancé involved. I knew that the guy had met my sister at college and had fallen for her almost instantly. He'd come over to our house a couple of times and seemed like a nice, reasonable guy, so I didn't really know how my sister had managed to land him. Unlike the other members of my family, he put in an effort to talk to me and get to know me the first time he came over to our house for dinner. Until my sister, presumably, put an end to it. She probably saw him trying to befriend me and couldn't stand the sight of someone treating me like an actual human being. So she waited until they were gone and then started feeding all the lies that she told our relatives about me. And he probably fell for it, because he didn't talk to me the next time he came over. But thankfully, I had his phone number because he'd given it to me on his first visit to try and get to know his future brother-in-law better. I hadn't ever texted him or called him because I didn't think that my sister or my parents would approve of it. But after I got kicked out of my house, I decided that I had nothing to lose. So I might as well contact him and tell him the truth about his wife. He didn't answer the first time that I called him. Then, when I called him again, he finally answered. But he still sounded skeptical. I figured that if I spoke to him on the phone, then he probably wouldn't believe me and think that I was just trying to create drama out of nothing to spite my sister. So I told him to meet me and I would explain everything to him in person, since I think things like these need to be discussed in person so he could really know that I'm telling the truth. It took me a while, but I managed to convince him to meet me during his lunch break the next day. I even offered to meet him at a restaurant close to his office for his convenience, because this was more important to me than it was for him. When we met, he seemed pretty irritable and anxious. I almost felt bad for him, because I was just about to ruin his perception of his future wife. I wasn't hoping that he would call off the wedding or anything of the sort, but I just wanted to get back at my sister and my parents. I didn't think about the consequences before telling him about the way that I'd been treated by my family my entire life. I tried to sound as genuine and earnest as possible, and in the process, I kind of realized that I probably didn't have to put up with this for so long as I did, and I should have told someone before. Speaking about it made me feel really emotional, because it was the first time that I was really opening up to somebody about my childhood, and I got kinda choked up. He looked a little alarmed when I started crying while talking about how badly my family would treat me, and that my sister, instead of trying to protect me from the neglect, actively made it worse and isolated me even more by making up lies about me so people would stay away. It seemed to click for him right then, and he told me that my sister had also told him a bunch of stuff about me, which is why he'd been so hesitant to meet me or even talk to me after the first meeting. Apparently, my sister had told him the same thing about me being a quote-unquote troubled kid, but had made it even worse by embellishing the story, so there would be absolutely no chance of him ever wanting to fraternize with me. She'd cooked up some story of me getting violent with her, only because she refused to give me money for drugs, and apparently, I had to be sent to rehab several times because of my addiction. She convinced him somehow that I was unstable and I couldn't be trusted around new people, which is why my parents were sick of me and she couldn't stand me either. I was stunned that she could even think of something so horrible just to make sure nobody thought of me as a human being and treated me like a pariah. My sister's fiancé apologized to me, even though it wasn't even his fault, and then told me that he had to leave. He seemed pretty horrified when he left, and I could tell that he was going to confront my sister about it very soon. I went back to my friend's place from the restaurant, not knowing what to expect. I didn't think that he would call off the wedding the very next day. The next day, I received a call from my sister telling me to come back home immediately and make things right. She informed me that her fiancé had come back home after his meeting with me, and they had gotten into a terrible fight because he'd chosen to believe me over her. And now he'd moved out and decided to call off the wedding overnight, and she blamed me for it. She wasn't crying and she didn't sound sad, but instead, she just sounded crazy pissed off. I could hear my parents screaming in the background, and I was pretty sure that they were cursing at me, but I couldn't make out what they were saying because my sister was also screaming at me and accusing me of ruining her wedding on purpose just to be petty. I told her that since our parents had refused to pay for my college tuition so they could cover her wedding expenses instead, it was only fair that I do something to get back at her too. And she told me that she hadn't even told them not to pay for my tuition, and that was completely their decision, so she shouldn't have to suffer for it. I argued that she was the reason that our parents always deprived me, so she completely deserved this. She just sounded exasperated and tried to explain to me that even though she'd bullied me for a while, she hadn't ever done anything to me that was this bad. But what I'd done to her was unforgivable and completely unacceptable. She said that the most that she'd ever done was just tell a couple of silly lies that our relatives were stupid enough to believe, and that wasn't her fault because they were looking for an excuse to push me away anyway. But she was trying to be a better person, and her fiancé didn't know that ugly side of hers, which was exposed, and now she wanted me to do something to make it alright again. Back then, I didn't think that it was worth it, so I told her that I wouldn't do anything and hung up the call, then blocked her for good measure. Since then, I've been receiving texts from relatives that I didn't even know existed, telling me that what I did was horrible and that I shouldn't have involved a third person in a fight with my parents. They want me to apologize to my sister, as well as to her fiancé, so they can carry on with their wedding because I had no right to meddle in their relationship just because my parents weren't willing to mollycoddle me. I don't agree with most of the things that people are saying, but I do think that it was kind of unfair for me to drag in my sister into a fight that didn't even involve her directly. If not for my sister's wedding, my parents would have just come up with some other excuse to avoid helping me out, I guess. But then again, my sister had bullied me for a really long time until she moved out. And even after that, she continued to make sure that nobody in our family had my back just because she wanted to be cruel to me. I don't understand how to go about this. Am I the a-hole for telling my sister's fiancé about her mean streak toward me because my parents were contributing to her wedding fund rather than to my college tuition? So, I decided that I was not going to apologize to my sister, and neither was I going to try and make things right with her fiancé. I did some thinking, and I came up to the conclusion that I don't really feel bad about what I did. And if I don't even feel bad or regret what I did, then I don't want to fake an apology. Besides, she ruined my relationship with my family with her stupid lies about me. Had she not done that, then maybe today, some of my relatives would still be willing to help me out. It's been a really difficult couple of days for me, since I think I might not even be able to go to college because I have no idea where I'll get that sort of money from. Even if I wanted a student loan, I would need help from my parents for that. It's been close to a week since I last spoke to my family. My parents haven't texted me at all, and my sister hasn't reached out to me ever since she called me up to tell me how I had ruined her wedding before it even happened. I've been living with my friend and his parents ever since I moved out, and they've been the best hosts, but I feel really guilty about living here without paying rent and being a total burden on them. They haven't said anything, and neither do they behave like I'm a burden. They're nice to me all the time, which is a nice change of pace from being ignored and rebuked all the time at my own house. They haven't said anything about money yet, and I don't think they will, cause they're decent people. But I feel guilty living off of them. So, if things don't work out for me, I have to start looking for alternatives really fast, even though I have no plan about what to do. It has been a little more than a week since I left, and today, I finally decided to contact my sister's fiancé and ask him why exactly he broke that engagement off. For the last couple of days, my sister has resumed texting me and bothering me constantly to set things straight with her fiancé, since she believes that this is completely my fault. I talked to my friend about it, and he told me that there's no way that her fiancé broke up with her only because she bullied me. He thought that there was something that my sister wasn't telling me and making me believe that I was the one at fault. But he couldn't imagine a guy just dumping his fiancé and letting go of a relationship of that many years just because their partner was a bully. On top of that, I didn't even have enough proof to show to my sister's fiance that she indeed had been a bully in the past. So it couldn't just have been what I said. He told me to talk to the guy and find out some more, so I could get to the bottom of the real reason behind their breakup, and once I knew, that would probably make my sister stop bothering me. So I decided to go with his plan and texted her ex. I didn't know what to say, so I just told him that my sister had been blaming me for their breakup, and I didn't think that I was the one at fault. So I would really appreciate it if he could tell me the real reason, and that would help me get my sister off my back. I didn't really expect him to respond to it or tell me the reason because he barely even knew me. But he replied within an hour and told me everything. I guess he'd been waiting to talk to somebody about it, and I was the only one who asked. He said that it was not just what I told him, but also a lot of other things that eventually led him to breaking off their engagement. But she wasn't telling anybody about those other reasons and was going around telling all their friends that he dumped her because he believed me over her. Apparently, they'd been having problems ever since they got engaged because my sister had turned into a complete control freak and was just totally taking over the wedding. He wanted to scale down significantly, but she refused and insisted on having an extravagant wedding for no reason. They'd been having a lot of disagreements over that, but my sister just refused to back down. She said that since her parents were the ones paying for everything, he shouldn't have any say in how the wedding would go, and he believed that that was unfair. Because it was his wedding day too, and he didn't want to spend a load of money on things that he didn't even want. He wanted a simple yet beautiful wedding, while she wanted everything to be over the top, and her reason was that they only get married once, so she wanted it to have it her way. He believed that they should be saving money for the future and taking a ton of money from her parents without any intention of ever returning it was just wrong on every conceivable level, and he wasn't comfortable with it. But my sister didn't even seem to care about his feelings and had made this wedding all about herself, which was bothering him because this was a glimpse of what he was going to have to deal with for the rest of his life now. And he didn't like any of it, so that was one reason. On top of all that, there was also a job offer that he'd received from his uncle, for which he would have to move out of state. It was a better salary, better accommodation, and just the work in general. It was a way better job than whatever he was doing right now, and the best part was that since my sister planned on quitting her job and being a stay-at-home wife, he thought that he didn't even have to worry about what she'd do if he took his uncle up on his offer. They'd been talking about it for a while, but my sister refused to leave and said that taking up this offer was a bad idea. She didn't want to leave her friends and family behind, and so she insisted that her fiancé reject that offer and keep working at the same company, even though it was a pretty stupid idea. He was excited about his new prospects and especially moving out, since that was what he really wanted ever since he heard about his uncle starting up a new company. His uncle's company was based out of New York, and he couldn't think of any valid reason not to move out and make a life there. But unfortunately, my sister was against it, and so he'd had to put his uncle on hold indefinitely, which was a huge bummer because he'd really wanted this for the future. However, now that they'd broken up, he could do everything that he wanted to do, and so he said yes to his uncle and would be moving out in a couple of weeks, which is why he hadn't bothered to set the record straight with anyone. His friends were all siding with my sister, and I honestly wasn't even surprised, because she'd always been a great liar and could manipulate people very easily. But this was a first for him, and he was finding it difficult to deal with emotionally, which is why he ended up venting to me when I texted him. He was hurt that they didn't even try to talk to him and find out the real reason behind their breakup, and so neither did he offer an explanation, because he didn't think that it was worth it, and what was done now. Anyway, he'd be moving away in a couple of weeks, and once he started his new job, none of this would matter. I guess that's why my sister had started texting me again, because she knew that she had limited time to get back together with her fiancé. After that conversation with him, I realized that whatever I'd said to him had been just a really small part of the reason behind the breakup. What I said to him ended up being the straw that broke the camel's back. But it wasn't entirely my fault like my sister had been making it out to be. Her fiancé had already started to see her for what she really was. And by the time I told him about my experience with her, he was pretty much disillusioned about her as a person. Even if I hadn't told him my truth, I still think they would have broken up. Because my sister had been a very difficult person to deal with all my life, and she'd made a mistake by showing her true colors to her fiancé before they got married. That's what scared him away, not what I said. So, after my conversation with my sister's ex, I decided that if she or my parents tried to get back in touch with me again, then I will spill the beans on what I know and tell her that I'll expose her on social media if she disturbs me. I know that I can just block her, but that's not fun, and I definitely cannot use that to my advantage. So, I made up my mind that if it came down to it, then I would manipulate my parents into doing what I wanted them to do. And they did call me yesterday. The three of them were on conference call, where my sister informed me that Fiancé was about to leave for New York in a couple of weeks, so I had to tell them that whatever I said to him was a lie, so they could get married at the earliest. My parents told me that they decided that they wouldn't get involved because of my insolent behavior earlier, but things had gone too far and they needed me to quote-unquote obey their orders now. Then, I decided to turn the tables on them and tell them everything that her fiancé told me, and even showed her the text as proof. My sister started stammering, and I could tell that she was flustered because she didn't expect me to know these things, and now that I did, it would be indefinitely harder for her to manipulate me and get her way. My parents didn't like it either and told me that I wasn't supposed to meddle in their personal affairs, but I told them to cut it out because I was the one who had the higher ground now, and they were supposed to listen to me if they didn't want me to go public with this information and expose what a liar my sister was. And that's how I talked them into paying for my tuition, because they were pretty desperate to keep it a secret, why my sister's engagement didn't work out for her. If people got to know the truth, my sister would definitely end up friendless, and even their relatives would do like this because I would also speak up about the lies that she told people about me. And the screenshots were all the proof that I needed to brand her as a pathological liar. So now, at least I don't have to worry about my tuition. I still have to get a job though, so I can pay rent to my friends for the next couple of months until college starts. It doesn't matter, since I'm still really glad that things worked out the way that they did. Guys, that was it for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Go ahead and smash that like button right now and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again. We'll be seeing you in the next one.